Anne original.
From Story Studio Network.
Well, here we go. Look at that. It is the first full week of May. We made it. And this is Now and Next. It is the flagship podcast for Story Studio Network. I'm Dave Trafford. Welcome in. Somewhat excited today just to introduce you to a team that I've managed to cross paths with, cross swords with, maybe even at times, depending on the environment we've been in. And we're going to get into some of the stories that, sort of above the fold, and then some of the stuff that you need to think twice about. Yeah. And they've all got years and decades of experience. I don't know. We should actually go around the room and figure out how many years of experience is in the room. Lindsay Broadhead is joining us, and there's going to be a lot of formalies in this. Spent some time at City Hall doing comms as well. We did some work with the team at Toronto Region Board of Trade. Anne Marie Aikens is here, formerly of Metrolinx. Brad Ross is here, formerly at the TTC when we first met, then at the City of Toronto. Bob Reid, probably the guy I've known longer than anybody because we hung out in the musty old corners of Queen's Park when he was working. When were you at CKO at then? Is that what you were doing?
That is correct.
Yeah. We had the pleasure of meeting and having the common acquaintance of the great Bob Carr. Bob Carr, Q107. CFGM News. When we want to get into it, we'll talk a lot about the Bob Carr stories. If you knew Bob, he was a character. So anyway, all excited because Lindsay and Anne-Marie and Brad and Bob all have extraordinary depth of knowledge, interest in not only the sort of the stories of the day, but the communications aspect of it, the political, minefields, and so on. So, let's just go quickly around the table. Lindsay, you are now back behind your own shingle, and away you go. Is that where you are right now?
That's where I am, sir. Yeah. Thank you for being the sticky glue, actually, that's brought us all together. This is awesome.
Well, and I just think it's, I hear your voices in various places, and I thought, that's kind of fun. And Anne-Marie, since you've left, and I said this last week, since you've left Metrolinx, it's almost as if they've taken handcuffs off you to be able to kind of actually say what you think.
To a certain extent, I can say what I think. I always have to remember there are inside voices,
right,
that I sometimes let out.
You've got one on your right shoulder, one on your left. Is that what's going on there?
That's true.
And Brad, you and I probably met when you were first at TTC. You spent time at the city. You are, are you self-employed now, or are you fully retired?
I am, yeah. No, I am self-employed. I am a solopreneur, as they say, Dave. So I'm going to give that a go. Semi-retired, just enjoying the good life.
Bob Reid, of course. So, yes, we met in the gallery at Queen's Park. Spent time working for Mike Harris as Premier of the province. But I think maybe the most memorable moment in terms of comms and you're working on a political campaign was when we sat down for an editorial board meeting at CFRB with John Nunziata. And you were in the room, and that turned into quite the conversation.
You had to bring that up, didn't you, Dave? You just had to go there.
Well, it was good fun. I was sitting beside you, and then for those of you who were trying to fill in the blanks here, that was the point at which John Nunziata had made some accusations that there were those who were suggesting that he should get out of the mayoral race and clear the path for another candidate. That was fair to say. It actually went to it got serious in terms of people investigating exactly what was going on there.
Sure did. You were sitting beside me. Did you see the blood drain out of my skull at that moment?
I didn't know you could break the point on a ballpoint pen. So that's where we were. It was good times. So the point of this panel is we're going to be here every couple of weeks here and just kind of kick around the stories. And again, I don't want to necessarily get into the story of the day, but where is the story that we are most engaged by, and where is it going, and the kind of impact that it might have down the road. So can we start with, first of all, just the big question about the integrity of the Toronto Police Service? Because over the last couple of weeks, it has taken a bit of a beating on a number of levels. And we begin with the whole scandal, shall we say, around Superintendent Stacey Clarke at Toronto Police Headquarters.
I'm a police officer. I've got the lived experience in those lens. I am a Black woman. I feel the responsibility to lift as I am climbing. There is a true ownership of that position that I continue to pave the way for others.
All right. I don't know where we want to start. Brad, you were at the city. You saw a lot of what was going on in terms of the dynamic between City Hall, police, etc. This story is about the highest-ranking Black woman in the Toronto Police Service who effectively allowed other officers to cheat on their exams for promotion. To hear the police chief come out and say, yeah, well, that's not what we wanted to do, but we don't see any need to either discipline her or fire her.
So let me just start by saying, Dave, on that, I worked very closely with Toronto Police Service and the communications folks, and I know that a number of things I don't know. I'm going to assume that a number of things that have happened in the last couple of weeks that have been said, the communication staff would have been beside themselves, knowing that they now had an issue that they were going to have to deal with. On the Stacey Clarke matter specifically, look, all I can, and I don't know enough about it other than to say the things that I've read in her quotes is that, what we're taught as kids is that two wrongs don't make a right. And I appreciate what she's saying about perhaps, the diversity and the need to lift those around her. But that doesn't mean that you can condone cheating. I mean, I don't think anybody would accept that. I think what police and what we're taught, again, and I'll leave it here, is you're going to get caught. If you're going to do this stuff, you're going to get caught.
Well, Anne-Marie, it's not even about two wrongs making a right or the other way around. It's the idea that this just calls into questions on so many levels the integrity of the police service, the promotional procedures, all kinds of things. That this is a self-inflicted wound, and to have the chief say, "Well, okay, I'm going to let this one go."
Well, I don't know if the chief is saying that. I think she's likely going to be disciplined. And I think she believes discipline is warranted for sure. But where I kind of come in, I think the public has had a lot to say. There's been a lot of moral outrage in this particular incident. When I didn't see that moral outrage really coming when, for example, the officers were recently accused by the judge of lying under oath, which I think that it always strikes me as what the public finds morally egregious, and it's and they say we have to get rid of bad officers when we tolerate all the time officers that can commit sexual assaults, even up to killing people, and we seem to have a tolerance for that, and we don't have a tolerance for a Black woman that I can't even begin to appreciate what her experience has been growing through the ranks of the Toronto Police after all these years. And it doesn't excuse her, and I don't think she's asking for anyone to excuse her behavior. I think they're just trying to understand where she was coming from, and I think she's admitted it was wrong. She pled guilty to them. So, well,
at what point, Bob, then does it mean that, okay, if the punishment is you can no longer be a police officer, never mind a superintendent?
Well, there can be demotions, which I expect we're going to see. They're still hashing out what the appropriate penalty should be there, but there absolutely needs to be one. And I think Chief Myron Demkiw is facing the first significant crisis of his tenure in his role as police chief, with the allegations coming out of the Zameer trial, his own comments on the heels of it, and now this. He's got to step up and start doing a better job. It's reminiscent of what befell Mark Saunders when there was black eye after black eye after black eye being dealt to the Toronto Police Service, and it soon became unstoppable. And this is what can happen organizationally and from a reputation standpoint. And I think Demke's really got to up his game on this.
Well, is it too late, Lindsay? Because Anne-Marie's already alluded to the Zameer verdict and his comments afterwards. As poorly worded as they may have been, he has to know that he's in the spotlight, specifically after something like that. When we talk about the death of a police officer in a murder trial, and then this idea that the OPP is going to investigate to see whether or not there was any collusion among the officers who testified in that case. Go back to the idea that it took 2 years to find a guy to replace Mark Saunders. So, I mean, the whole question of integrity around the police management, there's a bigger problem here than just what we're talking about with Stacey Clarke.
For sure. And, first of all, I feel compelled to say the work that the police do, and I'm not just throwing out a spun line here, the work that the police do, especially right now, is incredibly difficult. And I think they're facing an uphill battle on any number of different files. But integrity is a funny thing, right? And time again, it feels like the responses, whether it's the chief and his response to the Zameer file, whether it's Sergeant Clarke, her response to the students, in this case, the police officers, both are defending the integrity of the system in which they work in a strange way. They're using their power to defend their own actions. No one's thinking of the public in any of this. And looking ahead, the actions have to become more consistent. And this is where the chief, I think, has to double down in ensuring that the primary concern isn't always that of defending themselves, but rather defending the integrity of their brand and their position in the public side. Because time and time again, it's inconsistent, and that's what's at stake here. If what my panelists here are talking about is a slow spiral somewhere else, hopefully not to oblivion, then they've got to come together and resurface brand for the public.
All right. Well, we'll have to be curious to see how this plays out, because the added complication is around the procedure around how you recognize the qualifications of a police officer in promotion, and particularly the challenges that racialized officers have within the confines of that particular infrastructure. Brad, it just becomes, there's a bigger problem right there. Now, Stacey Clarke's actions actually make it more difficult, I think, to solve that problem.
Mm-hmm.
It's true.
I think on this OPP review, I think there's an opportunity here, and Bob alluded to it, I think, for the chief, as the leader of this organization, to ensure that review, whatever comes of it by the OPP, is transparent, that it's all put on the table. That will help, I think, with not only the chief's own reputation, but in terms of building that trust and confidence and building it back amongst the public. There's always going to be a segment of society that won't, but I think there's enough in the middle ground right now where if Demke can commit to and share the findings of this review by the OPP, I think that will go a long way to help these kinds of one-offs be better understood.
I think the whole comms question around that and the police is one thing, but the comms conundrum, and maybe even the salacious comms conundrum coming out of the Stormy Daniels Donald Trump encounter, well, it just hit a crescendo.
Riveting, bombshell, sometimes icky testimony from the woman at the heart of the first ever criminal trial of an American ex-president, Stormy Daniels herself.
And at one point, point, the judge admonished the prosecution, I don't know how much he meant it, not to go too far and wide and let too much detail get into the case. This woman is testifying like she paid for the microphone.
So there is the balanced reportage from MSNBC and Fox News. And Lindsay, what I find interesting about this, there's a whole lot I find interesting about this, is the way the narrative plays out beyond the courtroom, beyond the actual criminal case that's being tried here. But the degree to which, Donald Trump is really having fun playing this in the media. I know he was all, Fred and Barney around us.
What did you say? Oh, I said, Brigham, Rack-a-Frack, make a French promise.
And he was swearing out loud in the courtroom yesterday. But the idea that he's able to finesse this and turn this into a communication success, I know we've been following the guy for years, but it still blows me away.
First of all, I used a Flintstones reference with my kids the other day. They looked at me like I was from Planet Zorro. They had no idea what I was talking about. So I need to rectify that problem. Second of all, it's still far too early in the morning for me to contemplate sexual engagement with Donald Trump. However, let's move forward and do that. I don't know. I mean, clearly she's been given legal counsel to go full bore and to tell all the truth and all the truth, in the hope that it will counteract any strategy that Trump and his team has that just simply dismisses it. But to your point, it seems like this is just a festering cesspool here where more is just creating more and more damage for potentially both sides. But it's hard. It seems that people are characterizing her story as legitimate just because of the amount of details that are being shared. So that strategy may indeed work.
Well, publicly, Bob, everybody's saying, well, it's just going to prove that Donald Trump lied. Yeah, well, okay. We all get that. And in fact, I think in some cases it helps him so much because it distracts from the very complicated, nuanced conversation, which is, the legal arguments that are, illegal funding for his campaign in 2016. He's playing this like a maestro.
Yeah, he's playing the one tune that he always does, that this is a political witch hunt and he's being persecuted and he's the real victim here. That has worked. There's no doubt about it. That has worked for him fairly substantively. It's going to be interesting to see, though, especially when he gets on the stand, because the devil is in the details. And Stormy Daniels recalls every detail of the encounter, of the room that it took place in, of items that were there, of what Trump was wearing or what he wasn't wearing, and all of that. And that level of detail simply makes her incredibly credible. And for him to be able to somehow try and attempt to say, no, this never happened, this is all made up, this is BS, good luck, Donald.
Well, Anne-Marie, I mean, not to put you in the position to be his lawyer, but you got to know that his comms team is still involved in all this. What are you telling the legal team? Do you put him on the stand?
I think his comms team is called Donald Trump, because I think he calls all the shots. He's turned, and whatever machine he has behind him has turned politics into entertainment. They're celebrities like never before, and that sadly has seeped into Canadian politics. That is just entertainment for people. So the more entertaining you are, whether that's outrage, whether that's whatever, you win the day, and that gets votes. And it's incredibly demoralizing if you believe in politics at all. And these are the people that govern very serious decisions that impact the whole world, really, when you look at the United States and in Canada. And that part of it is saddens. But I really believe he calls his shots. I don't think he consults with any communication person on the way out. And if he does, he disregards them before he leaves the courtroom and then goes out and speaks to the public. I think he's he's not quite sure. That's my gut instinct. If he really wants to take it as far as going to jail, because that's what he's being threatened with if he keeps up certain aspects of what throughout this trial. He's painted himself as a victim. He's already got himself as an excuse if he loses, and how much triumph he can get if he wins. So it is very much a communication strategy, just like any other marketing strategy, perhaps, that he has engaged from day one in his politics, which, again, as I said, very saddens me.
Well, Brad, to Anne-Marie's point, whether or not he takes any advice from anybody on comms, there's a whole stable, a whole long list of former comms people from the White House of the Trump campaigns that are all now pundits on CNN and MSNBC and Fox News and everything else. So,
making far more money than we are on this panel, I would suggest.
Well, I bet they're making far more money than they were making on working for Donald Trump, even if he even paid them.
Perhaps
right?
if he even paid them. I'm with Lindsay. It's any combination of sex and Trump is just far too much for me to be able to stomach. So we all know that he is a serial narcissistic liar, and that I think, as Bob said, what the prosecution did yesterday was establish Stormy Daniels' credibility with her memory on all of these details, so that when the communication strategy for whatever that may be to attack her unfolds, they're going to have a difficult time with credibility. So, and I think and how is Donald Trump not at Rikers Island right now? I have no idea how that is. All of those contempt of court on those gag orders is just boggles the mind. And I suppose he probably wants to be thrown in jail. That what an image that would be for his base, and what a scary, frankly, thought it would be for that country.
Well, the idea of putting a president in jail is just it's not crazy. This creates this whole new security crisis that the Americans never, and the founders certainly didn't consider when they were framing the Constitution.
I still would rather see Donald Trump in an orange jumpsuit than those boxers that now I have printed on my brain.
Don't, Anne-Marie.
And who knew that pert was what was the magic behind his hair?
And Old Spice.
Old Spice. On brand. I love it.
Can you imagine the branding folks at Old Spice and Pert? Oh no, we can't be doing that.
When will we put an end to this wacko policy by this wacko prime minister?
No. I'm going to ask the honourable leader of the opposition to withdraw that term, which is not considered parliamentary.
I'll replace it with radical justice policy.
I am not asking to replace. I'm asking the honourable member to just simply withdraw.
Mr. Speaker, I replace the word wacko with extremist.
Mr. Polilievre, I have to name you for disregarding the authority of the chair.
There you go. And that was all the fun and games in Ottawa during the debate. And I'm not even going to spoiler alert. I'm not going to tell you what they were debating, because this is kind of took off all by itself. And they're still talking about it today in Ottawa as we speak. But Lindsay, you brought this up in terms of this whole idea of unparliamentary language is one thing, to get kicked out, but it turned into a campaign for Pierre Polilievre and the Conservative Party of Canada, because as soon as he was kicked out for refusing to withdraw the word, and it wasn't the word that was applied to the policy, it was the word that was applied to the Prime Minister, and that is wacko. They went on a media tour. They played that out over the next 36 hours and did interviews on it. They got all kinds of earned media on this. It was magical.
It was magical. And look, this is one of those subjects that we could riff on till dinner. quite easily. And I know there are some very serious takes on the word wacko, and we can unpack some of that as well. But not only did it gain campaign media traction, but the value of hindsight and time now that we have on this panel is that we know they gained a lot of dollars, right? It was a fundraising trigger for frankly the Liberals as well, apparently, but massively for the Conservatives. And my big thing with this is we have to now start from the premise, not end here. We have to start from the premise that the House of Commons is a place, it's a film studio where content is created, where these moments are curated, not dissimilar to a small film. They're packaged and they're sent out to market. So my question really is, and I don't have an answer, but where is now, because we still need it, it's a human need, where is the public space we've used the word integrity, for, honest brokering of these big, meaty discussions that we're having? I find it essential right now. And I don't have the answer. Like, is it in the corporate world? Do we have to create it net new? I don't see it playing out anywhere. And it's really worrisome because we know that more dollars are raised, the lower you go, not the higher you go.
So, Bob, is Lindsay being naive or actually onto something here?
Well, I think she's hit it on the head, that this was pure and total theater with a fundraising dimension attached to it, that the Conservatives rode as far as they could and are going to continue to do that. The fact that it works doesn't make me feel any better about it. I think Polilievre enjoys it tremendously, but I think he also does himself a degree of disservice when he does cross the line, when he does go there and remain unapologetic for it. It's not very Canadian. We get a little squeamish around stuff like that. We want to see, especially someone who wants to be the next prime minister, behaving more like a prime minister than an opposition attack dog. And I think he's got to watch his steps.
Yeah, Brad, it's just almost as if, Emery already talked about the outrage part of it, but it's the level of disrespect that has now become weaponized and is an effective tool. We to some degree we saw it at Queen's Park over the Kefia debate, right? So it's a level of disrespect that is actually applauded, and I don't know how you put that toothpaste back in the tube.
I mean, I think question period has always been performative to a degree, and there's always been discussion about, we're lowering our standards in the House, et cetera. But, on this particular issue, though, Dave, the thing that struck me was in all of this, on the specific issue itself, was the lack of empathy coming out of the Tories, coming out of Polilievre. So, he goes down this path of unparliamentary language, but at the root of it are people who are dying of drug overdoses. There is a crisis, an opioid crisis in this country where people are dying, and not to sound like an adversary of Polilievre, but he's taking political advantage of that to a certain degree, I think, and I think he would benefit from some empathy on this issue with those who might be on the fence with respect to who they're going to support in the next election.
Anne-Marie, I talked to David Coletto at Abacus about this a little while ago, and he would respectfully disagree in as much as the polls say otherwise, that people are going to vote for Polilievre. And I don't know if it's because they like him. It's because we're just fed up and we're tired with the Liberal government in Ottawa right now. But, I put it to him. I said, at some point, you're going to have to ask a question not about approval ratings, but do you like the guy? Mm-hmm. Right? And really kind of get at the heart of that. Now, we can say the same thing about Jagmeet Singh. We can say the same certainly about Justin Trudeau and the likability. But he has glommed onto this mood of change in Ottawa. And I get to a point where I think, you don't have to be an asshole to win. You're going to win, pal. So we're still 18 months out. I think they're playing a dangerous game here in terms of overstaying their welcome around these pithy clips and performative, situations in Parliament.
Oh, I agree. I think I'm really hopeful that Canadians will get sick and tired of it. And Brad, you were quite correct about the lack of compassion. For example, when 4 people died on the 401, so right after 4 people had died on the there was a police chase, and sure, people were talking about what on earth were the police, so many police cars going in the wrong way, going so fast on the 401. But 4 people had just died, including a baby. And where did Polilievre go right away? Immediately went to, it was Trudeau's fault for his catch and release bail stuff. That's why those people were out in this guy was drunk driver was able to be out there in the first place. It was all Trudeau's fault. He immediately went there. So there was no compassion about the grieving of the families that were grieving beyond measure, and that communities were really grieving. I think he has to look at, or his campaign has to really look at, you can only take that so far before you start to, wince.
Wince is a good segue to this. This is the piece that Brad passed along.
He is nuts and clearly disturbed. The Standard. He's angry. Vanity Fair. His own family hates him. The New York Post. He sounds like he's transmitting from another galaxy. He is so crazy. The New York Post.
Now, this is a long 30-minute piece from Robert Kennedy Jr.
What the is wrong with Bobby Kennedy?
Oh, that's the question. What the fuck is wrong with Bobby Kennedy? And he spends a good 3 minutes off the top here, Brad, talking about, all of the criticisms, all the conspiracy theorists, the craziness around his campaign. His own family doesn't like him in terms of supporting Biden. There's all kinds of, he lists it and he reads out all of the, the details around all of this and comes to the conclusion.
I wouldn't vote for that guy either.
Right? And that's sort of the spin on that. And that took him about 3 minutes to get to it. Yeah. And then begins to spend the last 27 minutes outlining the details of who he is and what he is. And oh, by the way,
his voice sounds weird. That's because he has spasmodic dysphonia. It's a neurological disorder that can affect the voice and speech. He can do 25 pull-ups in one go. And
then he keeps going on terms of what he's able to do physically and so on. And, that he is the nephew of the president, the nephew of a former senator, and the son of an attorney general and a senator and so on. And it just gets, really kind of crazy and out of control. But as we're talking here, I've got CNN up on the screen. I don't know if you guys have seen this morning, but he has told interviewers that doctors have found a dead worm in his brain. So I asked the question, what the fuck is going on with RFK Jr.?
I think he does have a worm in his brain.
I mean, the reason that what struck me, Dave, with this, and the reason I brought it up is, there's that old saw in our business that you don't repeat a negative, right? And he goes on ad nauseum. And, trying to go down the Jimmy Kimmel mean tweets route right. To be funny without the laugh track. So these are all pretty negative criticisms of Bobby Kennedy Jr., like, anti-vaxxer, conspiracy theorist lunacy. And he's simply repeating them without any of that context. And it just struck me as just this side of out of touch, frankly, with how people view. Who's going to watch a 30-minute video, by the way?
Well, I was shocked. I hung in for 3 minutes and I never got to the punchline. But, but somebody thought this was a good idea, Anne-Marie. They had a meeting. Somebody had a meeting and said, they should do this.
Yeah. I have been in a public servant for many years. And marketers did propose stuff that I thought, you are completely out to lunch if you think that's going to go over with the public. So sometimes people do propose you ideas that they think are really good marketing or communication efforts. and you have to be able to challenge and have a good perspective of things. I really have my doubts that somebody did that. Somebody actually suggested that. I think he came up with this idea on the Kimmel. That I think that that's what he was trying to do about how badly he's treated by the media specifically. I think, and all it did was, for me, confirm exactly what people are saying about him. That he is kind of out to lunch and has no rhyme or reason about what the hell he comes up with. And this worm in the brain thing almost makes sense. Maybe he's got something wrong.
Well, Bob, I read through the article and then looked at some of the details around it, and it was produced by the guy who was involved in, like, The Morning Show on Apple TV. So there was some serious production juice behind this whole thing.
Sure was. And Woody Harrelson doing the voiceover narration. The 30-minute piece is actually pretty good, and I can suppose the rationale for the mean tweets opening thing was, this is an attention getter. This will pull people in, and then they'll get the real story over the balance of the piece, which I think it does a pretty good job at. The trouble is, in this day of attention challenge, to put it mildly, who's going to watch a 30-minute thing besides me? I watched it just to see how it all played out and how it hung together. In the absence of that, we're left with the clip. We're left with the clip of RFK Jr. assassinating his own character through the words of others in his own voice. And that's the effect that it has. As Anne-Marie said, yeah, I think there's something wrong with the guy.
Lindsay, we bring it full circle to your comments around with the House of Commons. This is performative. It just is the lowest common denominator. And this is what drives political conversation and agenda.
Yeah, and like the lowest common denominator, like we just talked about, it's the most clickable. Like, I found, I'll be a contrary view in this for fun, because I agree with everything you're saying. Like, did he define his own story? Nope. Did he repeat the negative? Like, that's all it was. But I found it, like, painfully compelling. It was like driving down the highway kind of moment, seeing the accidents. You're like, I can't stop watching this thing. It's so bizarre and amazing. And I also wonder if we're the audience, right? Like, if what he's trying to do is find space between the old guy that is Biden, where, like, traditional Democrats are struggling, and then the utterly unethical guy that you can't trust. He's created this 30-minute masterpiece where he's evidently younger, right? Like, marginally anyway, still an older white guy, with all due respect to older white guys out there. And he's oversharing again. It's the Stormy Daniels factor. He's oversharing to the point of, well, maybe I believe him. Like, I found it oddly compelling. I'll wait till the data comes out to see if it has any cut through at all. But what a bizarre, I would never offer or take that strategy piece. But hey, maybe it'll work.
A lot of, maybe a negative in terms of the conversation that we've had. So I just want to go around the table quickly and ask you what's the one good thing, Brad, that happened to you this week? So let's finish on an up note.
All right. Well, I drive a 1978 Corvette Stingray, and its brakes had not been working for a long time, and I finally got them working, and the weather's nice, and I can drive it, and I'm out and about and having a grand old time. And my license plate, by the way, says no comment.
That's awesome.
Right on. Bob, how about you?
You'll appreciate this, Dave. I got to play with my band on the weekend, which is always a wonderful thing. There's
night the Leafs got eliminated, just to put it in context.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
We had to play around the hockey game, and then we're the entertainment at the funeral. But a good time was still had by all.
Lindsay, how about you?
I want to go for a spin with Brad. I want to see Bob in concert. I always just want to hang out with Emery and you, Dave. My perennials popped up. How nerdy is that? I usually kill most of my flowers, and my perennials popped up from last year. There's color in my yard. I am happy as a clam.
Emery?
I have two quick things. One is a nice person thing. I was with my 4 of my 5 grandchildren on Saturday for my youngest's first birthday. She's born on May the 4th be with you. But the other bad person thing is I walk everywhere, and I got splashed by a big, huge puddle by a speeding car, and started in on my swearing. And he ran right into the rear end of the next car.
Yes. Karma.
So
Karma
is
a bitch.
And then I felt really bad.
Right on. All right. Well, and mine is more or less to Lindsay's point. We have 2 flowering trees in the backyard. And this is the week that they flower. And they always flower around my dad's birthday. Dad passed away in 2018, but every week in May this year, the flowers come out, and we have a great conversation with Dad. Listen, team, thanks for joining us. We'll do this again in a couple of weeks, and I think this went reasonably well. It was good fun. Thanks a lot.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Dave.
Dave.
Bye, guys.
Pay no attention to that man behind the curtain.
Now and next is Story Studio Network's flagship podcast, produced by our chief executive producer, Dave Trafford, and supported by our entire SSN team, including our senior producers, Becky Coles and Jen Hudson, our technical producer and audio editor, Mike Trutler. Jamie Nickerson is our production manager, and our sonic logo designer is Greg McDonald. Also, I'm Erin Trafford, Queen of the Universe.
And that's all I have to say about that.
Okay, everybody, that's a wrap.
This is SSN.
Story Studio Network.